power of yes and no, K-N-O-W. In the gospel stories, Jesus gives much credit to this spiritual faculty that we call faith, in particular in the area of healing. But we have to remember that healing is not just a physical thing, okay? We need healing on all the different levels of our being. In body, in mind, healings in our relationships, in our finances, whatever it is that is out of harmony in us and out of sync with God's will of good for us. Some of the passages on faith I have printed in your program. And I will ask you to note that Jesus does not say, look, I've healed you. He always says, your faith has made you whole. Your faith has healed you. We understand in Unity that faith is one of our 12 spiritual faculties. And all of these are born in us. They are gifts from God, or we should say aspects of God that express through us. Faith is the perceiving power of mind, and it's linked with the ability to shape this invisible substance that is God's substance all around us. Charles Fillmore, Unity co-founder, wrote that faith is even more than belief, because faith, he said, is this deep inner knowing. It's unshakable. It is the inner assurance that what we seek to experience is on its way into our experience, even before any sign of it is showing up. However, this doesn't mean that we stand idly by, waiting for faith to precipitate our good from the sky. We understand that faith without works is dead. That we have to put feet on our prayers, and we have to do whatever it is we're guided to do to experience that blessing that God has for us. Yes, our faith allows us to believe it is already ours before we see it, before we experience it. But we have to stay open to guidance as to what to do to help bring that good to us, to help shape and form that good into our life experience. I remember reading about a grandmother who ran out of the house when she saw that her grandson had got trapped under the car that he was doing some work on. It had slipped off the car jack and had fallen on him. She dashed out of there, and this grandma picked up that car, okay, so that her grandson could slide out of that. Later on, she was asked how she had the strength to do that, and she said, you know, I don't know, but somehow I knew I could. And in my mind, that's faith, which can seemingly work miracles in our life. I came across a true life story on Thursday, and it's one of great faith to me, despite a dangerous situation for the many people who were involved in this experience in saving the lives of 2 little boys. It kind of actually brought me to tears. Your cover this morning is the cover, the beginning of this article. It's from Reader's Digest, the April 2018 edition. The story, however, took place in 2017. But I'd like to share this story with you. And I'm going to read from the text. Even now, almost a year after dozens of people who risked their lives to save 2 boys from drowning in Panama City Beach in Florida, they marvel at the memory that they have. The tattooed home builder who had nearly drowned a year earlier, an Asian couple who didn't speak English, the grandmother who had recently survived 2 heart attacks and would, before the boys are rescued, have a 3rd heart attack. One after another, they leaped into the roiling water, linking hands and arms to stretch nearly 100 yards into a riptide that threatened to swallow anyone who came near. Brian, the father, said, there were people there who didn't know how to swim whatsoever, and they were up to their necks in water, holding, locking wrists and hands to make a human chain to reach out to where the boys had floated on their boogie boards. The story begins on July 8th, 2017. The members of the Ursi family, there were 8 of them, were enjoying an evening together at the beach. And as the sun was moving down over the horizon, the 2 boys, Noah, 11, and his younger brother, Stephen, 8, got on their boogie boards and went into the water without any of the adults noticing. When the boys were about 70 yards from shore, they realized that the ocean had tugged them out to sea. After trying and failing to paddle themselves back in, they started waving and screaming for help. But the lifeguards had clocked out for the evening. The boys had been struggling for several minutes, screaming and yelling for help, when a couple, a married couple, Brittany and Tabitha Monroe, were walking by on the beach, and they heard the boys, and then they saw the boys out in danger on their boogie boards. They leapt into the water, and they were able to easily reach the brothers, who were still in shallow water. It was only about 6 feet deep at that point. The women reassured the frightened boys, and they grabbed the boys' boogie boards to kind of haul them back to the shore. And then they discovered that they were in a world of trouble too. They couldn't get back to shore, and they could barely and only occasionally tap their feet to the sand at the bottom. After a few minutes, it was clear to the women that they were as trapped as the boys in this riptide. I understand from the article that a riptide can quickly exhaust swimmers who try to fight them. And a powerful one, it said, can sweep even the strongest swimmer out to sea. Safety experts warn against trying to fight this current and advise anyone who's trapped in a rip to swim parallel to the shore until they're able to break free of the trap, the water trap that the riptide creates. And the 2 women tried to do this, but no matter which way they turned, they could not make any progress. They were stuck, as the boys on their boogie boards were stuck. Brittany, who had the 8-year-old, the youngest boy, Stephen, was struggling. She's a petite woman, a small woman. She's a good swimmer, but she was struggling, and she found her head going underwater, and she was struggling. And she was also trying to move the boy on his boogie board closer to the shore. She panicked, and she let go of the boy, and she swam for shore. By now, some teenagers who were on the beach heard the commotion, and one of the teens, a tall boy, he dashed out into the water, and he grabbed Brittany and hauled her back to the shore. Meanwhile, Tabitha, still out there with the boys, began to feel herself being pulled out with the boys even further out. And she was beginning to despair now that she, in fact, felt that she was alone trying to save these 2 boys. The waves kept plunging her underwater, and as the boys bobbed next to her on their boogie boards. On shore, her partner, her spouse, Brittany, is terrified, and she goes hysterical. There's a man who is going to his car, and he wasn't aware of what's going on, but he sees her hysterical and asks, "What's wrong?" And Brittany says that my wife is drowning, and she has 2 boys out there. And Sean looks out, and he sees the 3 of them out in the ocean, struggling and screaming for help. And he immediately strides into the water. And this is the guy that almost a year before, he got caught in a riptide at almost the same place, and he almost drowned. He's a big guy, and he almost drowned in this spot. So he knew the danger. And he went out as far as he could, but he reached a point where he told himself if he went any further, he would be caught in the riptide, and he would not be able to help the others. So he decided to go back to the shore. And at this, Tabitha, please, don't leave us, don't leave us. And he says, I'm not leaving you. I will return. I'll be back. And he said it broke his heart to leave them, but he really couldn't go any further without getting some other kind of help. So Sean says, I'll be right back. And about this time, Roberta, the boy's mother, returns from the bathroom and she looks for her children. They are missing. But then she sees and hears them way out, about 70 feet beyond where they were supposed to be. And she yells at the boys, come into shore. And they scream that they can't, they're stuck. She panics. She throws her cell phone down and she runs and dives in the water. And she swims, beating the waves, and she gets to the boys. And she assures them. She gets to the boys and also Tabitha, the stranger who was trying to help. They're all stuck out there. And she tells them, I'm going to help us all get back. And so she grabs onto the boys' boogie boards and begins pulling them as she's moving back, and she realizes she's stuck also. She can't make any progress back. So 4 of them are now trapped in the riptide that is continually moving them further and further out to sea. Sean, the man who previously, a year before, had almost drowned, flags down other people who are on the beach, calling them to come help. And they all come into the water. They wade into the water. And to keep from losing their footing, because with the riptide, the substance underneath them keeps being washed away, and they lose their footing and can slip and fall. And so they begin holding onto each other for security. And then an idea comes to them. Why not form a human chain going from the shore, from reaching out to where the women and the 2 boys are? And so this is what they begin to do. About this time also, there's a young couple, Derek and Jessica Simmons, and they become aware of what's going on here. Jessica is a strong swimmer, and so she immediately dives out and jumps in the water and goes forward, okay? And when she reaches the end of the human chain that has formed now, she is still, I guess, about 20, 30 feet out from where the women and the 2 boys are. They cannot reach them with the chain that they formed. Her husband, coming up behind her, he grabs Noah's board and he begins working with that. Now, there is the boys have a cousin named Justin, and a couple of weeks prior to this, Justin had broken his right hand on the same beach, and he was he was up near the shore, and he becomes aware of what's going on, and he too runs and jumps in the water and swims out. Derek pleads with his aunt, who is now holding the 2 boys there, pleads with his aunt to give him one of the boys. He's a strong swimmer. And at first she refuses, but he convinces her to give him one of the boys, at least, on the boogie board. And he feels confident, he has faith that he'll be able to pull that boy back to, at least, to connect with the human chain. And he tries to do this, and he realizes that he too is unable to fight the riptide and the current. Now, Derek, who is the boys, is he the boy's father? No, that's Brian. You get confused about who is who in the story, but it's a great story, even though I found myself writing down who was Derek, who was Brian. Brian is the boy's dad, Roberta is the boy's mom, okay? But the story goes on even with this. Now, Jessica, the woman, the young couple that were on the beach that go out to help, she is able to get to Stephen and help him make his way to the chain. And once she gets the boy to the chain, everyone in the chain begins passing him on his boogie board down the line, and they begin chanting, pull, 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 pull. Nobody dies on our watch. Pull, pull, pull. So they hand him to the next one off, to the next one off. Now remember, there are people out here who don't know how to swim, okay? And I related to that. I thought, how terrifying. But then I thought, how filled with faith they must be to join this line, knowing that if by any chance they lose connection with the other persons that they're holding, that they will get carried off. And I thought, wow, okay, it really brought me to tears to realize how faith-filled these people were. There was an Asian couple who did not speak English, and they had run out with a child's flotation device, and they were out there trying to fill this thing with air so that they might be able to help connect with the boys. There was a young man who was surfing, and Tabitha, Roberta, realized that if they could get a hold of this young man's surfboard, they would be able to hold on to it. It was large enough, long enough, until they could be rescued. Okay? And they yelled to the young surfer, and he, not really knowing what was going on, he laughed, and he went on down with his wave. Later, he returns with his board and becomes part of the human chain to help. But the father said that, you know, it was miraculous because here are total strangers who are essentially risking their own lives to be out here. And several of them have gotten caught in the rip tide by now. Now, seeing her two grandsons struggling, the grandmother, Barbara France, 69 years old, she runs out and swims out to the danger zone. Despite the fact that she has had 2 heart attacks in the last 2 months, she hears her grandkids in trouble and she is going to help. But within minutes, she is overwhelmed with the water. And she's still out in the water when Roberta and the boys are finally brought to shore. Now, that means that Tabitha and the 2 boys are still out there. The boy's cousin, Justin, tries desperately to float his grandmother on one of the boogie boards. But she's unconscious now, and she keeps falling off the boogie board while he's trying to pull her in, okay? He is ducking under the water to pull her up and try to get her back on this small board to continue pulling her back to shore. Derek, another one of the rescuers, swims up and helps out with keeping Roberta on the boogie board. Over and over, the waves hit them, and she goes under the water. Justin goes under the water, brings her back up, they get her back on the boogie board, they travel a bit more in the water. They're getting closer to the human chain. Barbara has become delirious now and incoherent. When she is aware, she yells at them to just let her go and save themselves. And realizing the gravity of the situation, this is when the surfer comes back with his board to help. Derek says, I just remember saying, God, give me the strength to keep this lady up on this board, or we both might die today. So he says all of a sudden he felt strong. He felt energy rushing into his body, and he picks Barbara up and he puts her on this board and he holds her on this board. So for the rest of this way, she doesn't slip off anymore, and he's able to get her back to the last person in the human chain. And they begin passing Barbara down the line on her board until they get her to shore. And once there, it takes her about 5 minutes before she comes to. She appeared lifeless, but she began spitting out the salt water. And later on, they realized that during all this time, she experienced a 3rd heart attack. And at the time that this article was being written, she was still in the hospital recovering from that. Now everyone was ashore except for Tabitha, floundering about 20 feet from the end of the chain, and the boy's dad, Brian, was still out there. Tabitha was, remember, one of the first to go out to rescue the boys. And she was now beyond exhausted, beyond despairing. "Hold on, baby girl." This stranger, Brian, yells to her, "I got you." And again, he digs the tips of his toes into the sand, and he tosses her forward. And again, the sea undoes his progress. Sean and the others in the human chain see what's happening, and a shout goes out that they should move the human chain down so that they can get closer to where Tabitha has floated. And so there's a scrambling in the surf, and a moment later, the chain reforms and realigns to rescue Tabitha. A fresh swimmer splashes in the water and gets up to her, and he says, "Grab my arm." Tabitha reaches for him, and he tugs her the last few feet to the chain, which then zips her back to the beach. In the meantime, Brian, the boy's father, has found his footing, and he wades in on his own steam. Now everyone, miraculously, has made it. The vast majority of the rescuers, the article says, that day remain anonymous. The teen who helped Brittany ashore, the lanky young man who swam Tabitha in, the Asian couple, each deserve to be celebrated, but they won't be. This humbles the Ursies almost beyond words. Brian, the father, says, "It didn't matter what color you were, what age you were. Everybody stopped what they were doing. They got off their phones, their tablets, whatever, and they helped get my family out of the water." Those people on that beach that day were angels on earth, says Roberta, the boy's mother. Whether it's the first person or the last person in that chain, they are our heroes. Every link was just as important as every other. The rescuers call it the human chain. The physical chain was indeed what rescued the boys and all of those who got trapped in the riptide trying to help them. But it was the deeply human aspect of the rescuers' strategy that made it so remarkable, their faith. They could have gone on about their day and not cared, says Brian, but they found good in their hearts to do what needed to be done. This right here, he said, kind of renews your faith in humanity. Stepping out in faith is not the result of acquiring more faith, but it's the act of releasing more of the faith that we have within us, more of the faith that we have been born with. The success that comes from stepping out in faith the first time emboldens us, strengthens us, encourages us to step out again and again on faith. Over time, stepping out in faith, that is saying, yes, I will, saying yes to God. Saying yes to whatever task comes before us as ours to do, ceases to be a challenge, and then it becomes a way of life, a way that we respond to life. Our world today demands that we have faith, especially when it seems that there isn't much of a chance for things. When we pray with faith and we have hope, and when we live and when we act on the guidance we receive, we open the possibility for good to happen. We open the possibility for seemingly miracles. We create the way for good solutions to manifest and to become real for us in our world. God bless you as you experience in your own life the power of yes, saying yes to God, yes to good, yes to opportunities for growth, and know that presence and power that strengthens you and emboldens you to move through that challenge or situation, such as the power of faith in your life. And let's have a moment of reflection now. I invite you to sit back where you're seated. You might like to close your eyes. And let's take a moment to reflect on this story, which to me is a story about faith, about strangers who come together knowing that they can work a seeming miracle. I remember that the article said that they began a chant, pull, pull, pull. No one dies today. No one dies on our watch. And allowing the faith of God to move through them, they encouraged each other to be a part of this chain. I can imagine how fearful it might have been for all of them. But think about this in your life. There may be experiences of riptides that you've had in your own life. And you have felt yourself moving so far away from where you want to be. And this has caused you to be fearful. Know that there is this presence and power of God in you, which is greater than any adversary outside of you. Take a deep breath and breathe in this awareness. I am a child of God. I am beloved of God. And this presence and power of love strengthens me, empowers me to meet every challenge with faith and to move through every challenge with faith. And breathe in that awareness. Let it become a part of the cells in your body. And now let's give thanks in the silence in our own way for this awareness. The faculty of faith allows us to say yes to life, yes to God, and allows us to move through our challenges. It is a gift, and we are so grateful for this gift. Thank you, God. Amen.
Affirmation blessing, which is in your program.